Okay, good afternoon. Just first sentence, I only speak English, so I only talk English, sorry, so IOTE, as Jessica would say. But good afternoon, and very pleased to be here. I'd like to thank our friends from Microsoft first to give us the privilege to be here with you today and talk about some things that it's often, I would not say neglected, but often the last in people's minds when we talk about IoT. And as Microsoft basically outlined today, we have intelligent edge, we have intelligent cloud, but we need something in between, which is called intelligent network, basically. So what I'm going to discuss is how we can bring that third pieces in the equation of any IoT solutions, and how can we help to empower this together with the intelligent edge and intelligent cloud solution that Microsoft Azure is actually providing to you. So just as a word, so I'm actually part of Tata Communication. So Tata Communication is a company part of Tata Group, which is an Indian-originated conglomerate. We actually operate in a very different industry. We have airlines, we have F&B, we have agriculture, we have automotive with Tata Motors and some brand like Jaguar and Land Rover. And in the ICT space, we basically operate in many domains, but we have a company called Tata Consultancy Services, which is one of the major global system integrators. And what Tata Communication does is provide digital infrastructure, basically globally to empower communication and digitalization in corporate. So what we do is actually we own one of the largest fixed network. Actually, 25% of the worldwide internet traffic is running on our network and our fiber optic networks, which are subsea submarine cable. We're also, you probably don't know about that, but the largest voice and international voice network. So I'm sure all of you are using Skype for Business. It's a wonderful solution, also provided by Microsoft. But we are actually the voice provider behind to power the communication. I'm not sure if it's familiar very familiar in Taiwan, but if you happen to use WeChat and use the WeChat out functions, this is also some things that we power. So when you place a phone call through your apps, it's basically the termination voice is carried on our network. We are also the largest roaming, mobile roaming interconnection provider. So if you happen to go outside Taiwan and use roaming, we are not responsible for the charge, but we are responsible to help carrying the traffic between your home network and the visited operator network. And we realize about 50% of the global interconnections for roaming. So that's just to keep a bit of word about Tata Communication and who we are. A very globalized company. Actually, more than 70% of our business is done outside India. Our headquarters, actually international, is based in Singapore. Our CEO and management team sits there, but we basically have office quite widespread around the world. We have been working extensively with Microsoft on very, very different areas, from cloud infrastructure to connectivity to a unified collaboration and also IoT. So very long-lasting relationship between our two companies. So now, as I mentioned, I'll touch base on basically how we can help realize that edge-to-cloud infrastructure globally to connect basically any IoT device that requires to discuss with a cloud infrastructure. And just to start, I'd like to share a couple of information of how do we see this business going forward. Maybe I have a question for you. Do you know by any chance, we talk about network, about 4G, now 5G. Do you know by any chance how many IoT devices are connected today on this mobile network globally? Just anyone want to make a guess? Numbers, throw a number in terms of thousands, millions, or billions. And I have nothing to give you if you win the except my sympathy. So anyone wants to try? Ah, over there. Sorry, I can't hear. Okay, that's by 2021, correct, but now we are in 2018, so good catch. So it's about 600 million, right? So, and by the way, that 28 billion include humans as well. So, but humans is going to play out only to a limited extent. We are like 7 billion human. But we do expect 28 billion devices to be connected. But most importantly, as we invest into 5G networks, this network has been designed by Essence to manage over 500 billion devices. So this is times 1,000. The growth we are going to expect in our business is going to grow times 1,000. And what does it mean is also the way we are actually designing infrastructure, we are designing platforms, we are designing solution needs to be completely different from what we have been doing in the telecom industry and in the network industry for the last 20 years, where we only had to connect 7 billion people. And that's basically where we see a lot of opportunity to change the game, but also to work in a very different way with you on such solution. Why is it also important to point that out is most of these applications are going to be mission critical application. We talked this morning about earlier about smart city application, but we do have customers who operate very mission critical application, healthcare, for remote patient monitoring, or elevator maintenance. So can you imagine what happens if you have a disruption in a network to basically, what's the consequence for the customers in terms of liabilities they have to pay to a government or to their customers in case of disruption? We talk about automotive as well. I mean, and going forward, we'll have autonomous drive. So if network cannot respond to certain SLA and KPI, that's going to be a very huge impact on the customer's balance sheet and income statement when there is disruption, which is completely different from when you try to place a phone call and it doesn't work. So these are some of the elements we have to consider when we build infrastructure for IoT. And actually, we can summarize these 4 requirements into really 4 different areas. And this is what we see across all the customers we are actually working with globally on IoT. The first thing they come to us is say, why cannot consume network in a very pervasive way? What does it mean is, if here in the room I have a Chunghwa Telecom available, I want to consume Chunghwa Telecom, but if I walk outside the building and I realize that Far Eastern or Taiwan Mobile give me a better coverage or a better speed or better availability, my application needs to utilize that networks because I want to optimize my delivery. So this is something that's very important for our customers when we talk about this mission critical application. And today, when you buy a connectivity from an operator, you are usually locked to one network. So you can't really have that freedom, that flexibility, that network agnostic capabilities to drive efficiencies here on the coverage. The second point is reliability. I mean, often networks have been, especially in mobile, a black box. You can't really open and see what's inside and how does it perform, how does it work. So how can you create that framework of API that can give visibility and control to actually the application? And how does that visibility and control can be managed from the application point of view so you can increase the reliability of your solution? That's the second point that is important. And we're going to talk about that intensively later. The third point is about security. I mean, we are sometimes managing applications that are very sensitive. If we talk about a healthcare device, I mean, this is personal data that can be quite critical for the customers. So how do you ensure the level of security that you have from the edge device to the cloud is maximum? And you can create an isolation from internet or from hacker that will try to basically penetrate your system. That's the third element that is important. And then the fourth is when our customers are actually designing products and designing solutions, they don't look at it just for one market, right? And they don't want to have as many products as you have market. No, they want to have a single stock keeping unit that they can deploy across all the market in which they operate. So how can we offer that scalabilities where the solution you are going to standardize is going to be the same wherever you're actually going to deploy without any additional R&D effort or engineering effort to actually modify your product to actually operate in Taiwan, in China, in India, or in the United States and Europe. That's the fourth element that is important. Now I'm going to share you some example of some of the customers and actually customers and case we have in common with Microsoft. If we look at the telematics, I think we mentioned that a bit earlier. I mean, these are the things that are top of the mind of our customers when they are actually equipping IoT solution in commercial vehicles. Of course, security is important, but they also have requirements that are not just limited to one specific geographies. I mean, vehicles are by essence moving, and sometimes they can move across different countries. So how can we offer that cross-border experience? How can we provision vehicle in a way that it's seamless and automated for the customer? And how can they manage and perform, monitor their application in real time from a single systems that is based for the customers in Thailand, and when they have vehicle that could be sometimes at 1,000 kilometers away from the first engineer that can support. So how can you perform all these tasks remotely so that you don't have to dispatch an expensive engineer? So these are some of the considerations that we're trying to solve with our customers. And one of the cases that here is interesting is a company that is quite interesting. They are a small, medium enterprise, but they have developed a very innovative solution in Southeast Asia, actually to bring fleet and intelligence cloud, intelligent device into a commercial vehicle to operate fleet more efficiently. Okay. The second case is more related to smart city and more in particular smart estate. So we are actually providing solutions and for a company based in Singapore called Sobana. They are actually a government agency in Singapore, and they are actually running for all public estate elevator monitoring. And you know the problem in an elevator is when there's an issue and someone is stuck inside, you need to actually be able to intervene within a framework that is very limited. Otherwise, you have to pay penalties to governments, and they are quite healthy penalties, especially in Singapore. So what needs to be done here is how can you, of course, optimize the maintenance of lift, make sure you have a maximum availability. So they install IoT solution, which are powered by Microsoft Azure, and we provide basically the network to connect edge device to cloud. And these are some of the considerations that were very important to them. So now they don't operate in multiple countries. It's very local in Singapore. But what is important is at a specific location, they don't know which network will be available from the three operators. So they want to have that maximization in terms of network coverage. And more important, if there is a disruptions, they want to make sure they can switch to another network so they can carry their application and traffic and maximize their availability and uptime of the solution. They are also very picky about security because we are managing very sensitive application. So how do you secure end-to-end the edge-to-cloud infrastructure, and so on and so forth. So these are two examples that are quite critical, a very diverse industry, but again, a very similar concern in the way they operate. So what do we do? Well, first, I mean, if you think about IoT, you have a lot of different things that you need to put together. And that's some things we hear and we see quite often. How can we collaborate more intensively between players at different endpoints of the value chain, the edge, the network, and the cloud, to create a seamless infrastructure, to make things more interoperable and pre-integrated? And that's where we see a very important role between us and Microsoft. How can we make network and cloud pre-integrated? So when you deploy an application in the cloud, you can automatically access this from the networks, both from a fixed and mobile perspective. But how do you integrate networks into device so that your devices are actually born connected and can integrate seamlessly with their cloud infrastructure. So these are some of the problems. Together with Microsoft, we have actually started the journey to solve and to make better. So how does it work, basically? Whenever you want to deploy a device, you can actually consume our networks. And how does that work is basically you integrate what we call a SIM, basically, which can be physical, but now we're talking about software SIM cards, which are actually embedded into a secure element or in OS that can connect across an aggregation of more than 600 mobile network, which we have aggregated for you, and connect directly to the Azure cloud in a complete private environment. So there is no internet in between. We are actually leveraging, if you are familiar with the service, ExpressRoute to actually interconnect any network in the world with a Microsoft region and data center. So if I put a map, this is how it looks like. You basically have Tata network and Tata and Microsoft region truly interconnected onto one network. Any device that you will deploy will connect to our network and go to the nearest region in Microsoft Azure. Now, if your device move, let's say, into the US, it will go back to our network in the US and connect to the Microsoft Azure region in the US, offering you a global platform with a regional and localized experience. And that's actually the best of two worlds. Okay? So if I look into more architectural slide, and that's the only technical slide I have, I'm traditionally more high level, but I think it's important to understand how it works. What is important with us is we actually control the entire infrastructure end-to-end. It's our own assets globally. The only things we don't control is actually the mobile networks, the radio networks in each country. And here what we have is redundancy. But then when a device connects to our network, it will be actually redirected to the closest gateway and the closest Microsoft site through a private connection, so MPLS network that we have pre-integrated with all the region of Microsoft data center. What we have developed on the top of that with the IoT framework is capabilities, basically, to provision your device ID, basically, which we use to actually authenticate to the device twin and some of the hub functions. So we basically use the secure element in the SIM to carry that device ID securely into your device. In the same way, mobile operators have done that with basically keys to the mobile network to actually authenticate to the Azure IoT. And then what we have done, and it's still a progress, some of the API functions to control the networks are actually usable in the Azure IoT framework. So you can basically, from the application layer, manage policies, manage network functions that are relevant for your device. Think about a device being deployed in a country and where for a reason X, Y, Z, price of the network or quality is very high. So you have very high bandwidth. Now, my intelligent network can give that information to the IoT. And you can start to throw a lot of data because you know you have bandwidth, you have quality. But now this device moves into an area where the bandwidth is not really available very well, or it's only a 2G network or a 3G network. Then your application will know that information and you can adapt the kind of data flow that you will be sending from the edge to cloud. So all that intelligence is super important to deliver an experience to the customers or to the final user that is optimal when using basically your end-to-end service. So these are some of the integration work that we are constantly doing and between network and cloud. All right. So I basically talk about that, but just as a quick note on this one, as I see time being under constraints. So why Tata Communication and Microsoft? So I mean, we are behind a lot of the work that is being done on internet. I mean, providing operators, providing MNC connectivity. But if we look at what needs to be done here in these IoT services to bridge edge, and cloud, there are really few ingredients that are very important. You need to have a global network. You need to have the asset to connect globally any device. You need to have last mile agreement with operators to be able to connect locally into network. You need to be mastering cloud technology and virtualization. And you need to be able to have security to provide end-to-end capability. So these are all the ingredients that are pretty much our core foundation as Tata Communication. And the reason why this is, for us, a competitive element that we bring to your IoT solution together with Microsoft. So as a conclusion, when we talk about experience, there are really 6 elements we want to bring forward. The borderless, the fact that you can deploy a device anywhere within a country or in between country. The integration and the seamless automation we can realize between cloud application and edge device, so that zero-touch experience, making application and network fully integrated, programmable, secured, and cost-effective. So in a nutshell, these are the elements we are bringing together on this global edge-to-cloud infrastructure. And with that, I will just thank you and hand over the mic to...